According to Thursday, July 31st spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful, Brooke Logan lashes out at Ridge Forrester and flees with Nick Marone, while Lee Finnegan will turn down Sheila Sharp's request. With all of the memories of Italy and the media attention she received with Ridge, Brooke is now wondering why she came at all. Brooke is undoubtedly having difficulties at the moment since it's just too difficult to be near Ridge in this way. Nick will naturally want to divert Brooke's attention and present her with an alternative course of action. Ridge will obstruct Nick's plan for Brooke to go to Italy for some fun and engage in a furious altercation with his opponent. According to B&B spoilers, after Ridge declines to get back together with Brooke, she will decide she has had enough of his possessive behavior. Ridge will go off with Nick and allow him to woo her with some romantic moments when Brooke puts her on full blast. Nick will undoubtedly have enormous preparations as he gets ready to take Brooke out on the boat and make a memorable marriage proposal. Lee will conceal a startling reality back in Los Angeles in the interim. Sheila has been pursuing information regarding Luna Nozawa's grave or ashes since she is anxious for some closure. Sheila begs Lee to give her the answer she wants, but Lee refuses. Lee will instead merely state that she is powerless to help Sheila at this time, and possibly advise her to simply go on with her life. Lee will only increase Sheila's doubts when she tells her to forget about this. Sheila will continue to obsess over Luna, as a result of Lee's peculiar response to her inquiries. Sheila will get increasingly certain that Lee has something to conceal the more bizarrely she behaves. Since Lee is taking care of her unconscious niece and granddaughter behind closed doors, B&B fans are aware that she is in fact keeping Luna's survival a secret. Ridge and Brooke took a speedboat down the Amalfi Coast. They continue to look at one another and smile as Unforgettable played. Eric and Italian designer Luisa Beccaria are there to greet them as they arrive in Capri. After complimenting her on her fashion skills, Brooke and Ridge went to the location where they were hosting a fashion show together. Backstage, Ridge and Eric labored to prepare the model's clothing. Although he didn't want to disturb Ridge the previous evening, Eric claimed to have witnessed Nick and Brooke sharing a kiss when he was in town. It appeared serious, he cautioned, and he had to commit to Brooke before Nick did. Ridge reminded his father, "I've made a commitment to Taylor. But have a peek at your location. You're present." "In Italy," Eric answered. He advised Ridge to take advantage of the day and see where it took him, and to recall himself of everything he had experienced with Brooke, particularly in Italy. Nick's boat was still being repaired at the marina, but Tomas had an idea. He arranged for Nick to be driven to Capri and Brooke in a convertible cab. When he got to town, he went to the fashion show on foot after asking a woman at a store for instructions. While Brooke was getting her hair and cosmetics done, Ridge stopped by the dressing room to say hello. He informed her that Eric had spotted them together, and that he was aware Nick was in Naples. "I'm glad to see Nick, but I'm sorry the news spoiled your otherwise wonderful day." "He at least tries," Brooke teasingly said. Ridge described Nick to Brooke as a self-centered snake. He was dismissed by Brooke, who suggested they could discuss it after the program. The fashion show took place outside on the patio, and the audience appeared to enjoy the styles displayed. However, they shouted and gasped when Brooke emerged wearing the eye-catching outfit. Ridge and the other models watched as Brooke strode triumphantly past the crowd, blowing kisses and waving. Brooke continued to give Ridge knowing glances as she went back, and he grinned. Ridge wrapped his arm around Brooke to pose for the media who wanted to take pictures of them together after the concert. They referred to them as fashion royalty, but Ridge drew Eric in and declared that his father was the real fashion king. A reporter inquired as to whether Ridge's engagement to Dr. Taylor Hayes was real. Instead, he turned to face Brooke, and the two of them stared at each other awkwardly. Eric interrupted to remark that their goal for the day was to discuss Capri's beauty and fashion. After that, he complimented Brooke for her timeless beauty, which was an inspiration to us all, and Ridge for his efforts. Reporters raved to Brooke and Ridge about their last fashion presentation, where Brooke stole the show in a bridal gown that brought back memories of their wedding in Portofino. Brooke excused herself, but Ridge wrapped his arm around her once more for additional photos. Ridge approached and inquired about her well-being. Brooke wished she was okay as she moaned about all of her memories of the two of them together. Ridge followed her out of the press conference as she continued to walk away. Eric turned to watch Nick enter. Approaching Nick at the door, he excused himself from the reporters he was speaking to. Nick claimed that one of the VIPs would be delighted to see him, despite Eric informing him that it was a private function. "You're not welcome here," Eric said with a frown. Ridge and Brooke were standing on a patio outside, close to the beach. Brooke required further time, but he suggested they should definitely return to the luncheon. Ridge admitted that it was painful for him to watch Brooke in that state, and that he knew she was struggling. Ridge resisted Brooke's suggestion that she simply go. Brooke informed Ridge that she could no longer handle their erratic relationship, and that it was killing her. Brooke told Ridge that she could see how much he loved her every time she looked at him, but he was too obstinate and foolish to acknowledge it. "All you want to do is tear my heart apart, drop it to the ground and repeatedly trample on it." Frustrated, she questioned, "Do you really like seeing me like this?" Although Ridge said he didn't, Brooke informed him that it was agony for her, and that she was no longer able to do it. Ridge stopped her as she turned to go. He stepped forward to place his hands on her shoulders. He comforted her by holding her arms and saying, "Stop, stop." Brooke informed him, "I have to leave, it's too difficult for me." "Please don't," Ridge begged. "Don't you? I have no idea why I traveled with you to Capri, Italy. The number of lovely memories is simply too great. I'm unable to remain here," Brooke moaned. Ridge responded, "You're not going anywhere," as she gave him a perplexed look. She placed a hand on Luna's shoulder at Lee's apartment and assured her that she would not allow her to pass away. Lee pleaded with her to come through while administering her medication via needle. Sheila revealed that she missed Luna, and Deacon could see she was upset at Il Giardino. Sheila was troubled that Lee wouldn't tell her where Luna was, even though she believed that they had a relationship over Luna's passing. She attempted to call Lee, but she didn't pick up, which seemed to be a pattern given that Lee had visited the restaurant and offered to help. Sheila believed that she owed Luna that much and simply wanted to honor her granddaughter. Lee was brusque with Sheila when she went back to Il Giardino to get takeout. In order to see Luna, Sheila inquired as to the location of her ultimate resting place. With a heavy sigh, Lee gave her a stern look. Sheila asserted that, as her grandma, she was entitled to know her location. With her arms folded tightly across her chest, and her heart thumping with a mix of rage and heartache, Brooke stood still. The only sound in the living room was the muted ticking of the old wall clock, which seemed to be counting down the seconds she had left to be patient. A breach in Ridge's armor, a glimmer of remorse she was all too familiar with, was visible as he stood opposite her, his jaw tight, his eyes focused defensively. Too many times before she had seen it. She murmured, "You did it again," in a low, controlled voice that seemed to be an attempt to contain the tempest inside of her. "Without consulting me, you made a decision that would benefit us both. Without speaking to me at all." With a groan, Ridge combed his thick hair. "Brooke, I was attempting to keep you safe. You have no idea what it's like to manage the firm, my family, your family, and all of this mess. I didn't want to involve you," she yelled. "But you already did," with her eyes darting. "You do it every time. You act as though your viewpoint is the only one that is correct, and that you are the only one who matters when making judgments. That is unfair," he whispered. "It's unfair that you keep expecting me to just follow you in line, as if I don't have my own thoughts or voice," she added, taking a step closer. "Ridge, I'm exhausted. I'm sick of this cycle." He opened his mouth to say something, but she stopped him with a harsh shake of her head. She was no longer able to contain it because the dam had cracked. All of his disappointments, betrayals, decisions to choose Taylor, job, or control over trust came rushing out now, raw and heavy. "You claim it's about love all the time, but when it comes to actually proving it, you go for safety. You decide on what is familiar and comfortable. Not me. Never me. You think Nick is any different?" Ridge retaliated with a rage of his own. "He is careless. I understand you better than he does." "No," she answered sourly. "He doesn't make the effort to comprehend me as you act. He pays attention. He doesn't act as though I'm helpless or in need of rescue." "So what, you're just going to run to him now?" "I already have." Between them, the words landed like a hammer. Ridge stepped back, clearly dazed. For once he couldn't speak. Brooke experienced a brief wave of shame, but it was swiftly replaced with a more profound sensation of freedom. After too much time spent walking a tightrope, she finally made the leap. "When?" he said softly. It doesn't matter when, she said, suddenly more composed. The fact that I've made a decision is what counts. I will no longer be a shadow in your life. Ridge averted his gaze, as though seeing her was unbearable. Brooke didn't wait for him to deliver one of his typical speeches, which are about fate and how things were supposed to be. The mythology had become stale. Her footsteps were quiet but determined as she passed him and picked up her suitcase from the chair. Warm, blazing sunlight slammed into her face as she left the home. Washing away the traces of all those years of love and pain twisted together was like a weird kind of baptism. Perhaps her lungs had more space today, or perhaps the air was fresher than she remembered. With sunglasses protecting his eyes from the late afternoon brightness, Nick waited for her by the marina, leaning against the railing. When he saw her, he looked up, his face initially unreadable, but then she noticed the gentle smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Real, not arrogant, not victorious. He said, "You did it," without asking. Brooke gave a nod. "I had to." He pointed to the boat behind him that was rocking gently in the harbor. "Come on. Let's travel to a location with less ghosts." After a brief moment of hesitation, she approached him. She didn't draw away as his hand touched hers. Brooke felt the first hints of tranquility, something she hadn't experienced in a long time, as they boarded the boat together and it began to move away from the dock. As they got further away from the coast, the wind blew across her hair. She stood next to Nick at the bow, watching the city become softer and less imposing as the coastline dwindled behind them. From this vantage point, Ridge's voice, his command, and the weight of constantly needing to make repairs all looked less heavy. Nick poured them each a glass of wine after opening a bottle. For a while they sat side by side without saying anything. Brooke took a leisurely sip, allowing the heat to melt into her throat. She understood that he didn't expect anything from her. She didn't have to defend her feelings or prove herself to him. He simply left her alone. "Do you regret it?" he finally asked. Brooke gave a headshake. "No. I feel like I made my own decision for once." Without pressing, Nick nodded in understanding. Perhaps they matched together now because he had his own past and traumas. They wanted something better because they both understood what it was like to be hurt, not because it was easy or flawless. They anchored next to a peaceful bay with turquoise, tranquil water that stretches indefinitely toward the horizon. With her toes touching the ground, Brooke hung her feet over the side after taking off her sandals. Her lungs were flooded with salt air. Leaning her head back and closing her eyes, she let the sun to caress her skin. She said, almost to herself, "I don't know what comes next." Nick remarked, "That's the best part. We don't need to be aware. All we need to do is desire it." Brooke looked at him, and he met her eyes with a steady, genuine look. Something was unusual in his gaze, not the intensity of obsession, nor the fire of conquering. That was not as steady as it was. It might have been acceptance. She had sought certainty for years. Despite Ridge's repeated assurances, it had consistently eluded her. She wasn't sure she needed assurance anymore. When she wasn't holding on to the notion of being someone's destiny, she needed room to breathe, to develop, and to discover who she was. On the boat, they spent the evening telling stories, laughing, and being silent. Something old, heavy, and bitter began to loosen inside Brooke as the sun sank beyond the waterline, streaking the sky in scarlet and gold. She later sat next to Nick under the stars, wrapped in a cozy blanket. The world seemed far away, and that wasn't scary for the first time in a long time. It felt liberating. Ridge was on her mind, about their common past, their kids, and their memories. That wouldn't go away. She wished it wouldn't, but she was no longer bound by it. Her future was not defined by it. Nick swept a lock of hair away from her face. "Brooke, we'll figure out what you need this to be. My purpose is not to trap you. I'm merely present. If you desire me." She grabbed his hand and gave it a light squeeze. "I do, but I desire myself more than that. I want to quit letting someone else's definition of love steal aspects of who I am." His words were, "Then that's what we'll do. We'll find your version." It wasn't flawless. There were still issues to resolve, wounds to mend, and pasts to disentangle. But Brooke didn't want to go back because she knew she had crossed a boundary she would never be able to uncross. It wasn't revolt when they left Ridge. It was a sincere deed. She had no place in the background of someone else's tale. It was time for her to write her own. And she didn't turn around for the first time in what seemed like an eternity.